The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the English Australia webinar, Testing EAP Writing Skills with the Pearson Test of English Academic, presented by Louise Fitzgerald. This is Sophie from English Australia speaking at the moment. I'm introducing the session. I'd just like to know if everybody can hear me and if they can see the first PowerPoint slide with Louise's picture on it. If yes, can you please just type yes into your computer? Great. Got lots of yeses coming through. All right. Well, welcome again, everybody. I'm very delighted to introduce Louise today. Louise teaches EAP at the University of New South Wales English Language Centre in Sydney. And as well as that, Louise is actually a Pearson Test of English academic teacher trainer. She has trained teachers around the world, including in Nepal and New Zealand and around Australia. And she will continue to do so for the upcoming time. So we're delighted to have such an expert here to present today's webinar. I'll hand over to Louise now.
Thank you, Sophie. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming to the webinar on academic writing skills for the Pearson Test of English Academic. So first I'd like to know a bit about you, and Sophie's got a poll, 2 poll questions. So she's going to put them up in a second, I think, just to know, what experience you've had with this test. So I think you can see it now. I hope you can see it now on your screen. So okay, so 50% have already voted. Oh, it's going up, so more and more. That's good. Okay, so quite a few people have. What was the first question, Sophie? Oh, yeah, teaching EAP. Okay, there you go. So it seems like 33. 2/3 of you have, and a third of you have or are not. Okay, now there's a second one coming up about your experience with the Pearson Test of English Academic. So that will be coming up in a second. Okay, here we go. So that's, okay, so we'll just wait to see. Okay. So they're coming in now. Okay, so about a third of you have taught the Pearson Academic, and about 20% of you expect to be in the next year. So that's great. Okay, so you've got some interest in this. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm sure you know that the Pearson test is now becoming quite big all over the world, but particularly interesting to us in Australia. So Pearson's doubled the number of test centres since this time last year, and there are now more than 100 test sessions per week in Australia, and each test session has up to 15 test takers. So they're testing up to 3 times per day, 6 days per week in major centres. So they're quite busy. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. So first we're going to have a look at 4 of the 6 writing items. The 2 that we're not looking at are not really EAP type writing items, so I didn't think they'd be of much use. So we're going to look at summarise written text, write essay, reading and writing, fill in the blanks, and summarise spoken text. Then we'll have a look at the scoring and the scoring engine, And after that, I hope we'll have 10 minutes for questions at the end. And Sophie will manage those for us. Okay, so let's first look at the writing items in the context of the whole PTEA test. So as you can see, there are 3 parts to the test: speaking and writing, which is one part tested together, then reading, and then the ones that have just come in are the writing items. So of the 20 PTEA item types in total, the blue ones are the writing items, and the ones that are in bold and italics, they're the ones we're dealing with today. And this shows you where they fit within the test, because this is in the order of the test itself. Okay, so the skills needed for these item types are generally what are taught on EAP courses, and EAP courses prepare students for this type of item even if they don't realise that they're doing so. So now we'll look at the writing items. So, as I said, 6 item types assess writing. These are the ones which test academic writing skills. So you can see the time allowed for each of the items we'll be looking at today and how many of each item type a candidate will encounter on their test. This is not always the same, as the test forms are randomised, so candidates are very unlikely to be taking exactly the same test in any one testing session. Teachers are often concerned about the timing for write essay. It's only 20 minutes, as you can see, which is not long, but they are typing rather than writing, which has been found to be 30% quicker on average and can be much quicker for fast typists. Also, they can use the cut, copy and paste buttons for ease of editing, and there's a word counter. So there's none of the frantic word counting that goes on in some other tests. And our students are much more familiar with typing essays than many of us were, well, certainly than I was when I was taking tests. Sure, students need to be trained to write credible essays in a short time, but they only have to write to persuade. So they don't get the variety of essay types which are found on other tests. And they only need to write 200 words to get full marks for form. A short introduction, 1 or 2 body paragraphs, and a short conclusion in conventional academic style will get them there. So let's have a look at the interface that a candidate has when they're taking the test. So you can see this is Summarise written text. If you look at the top at the right-hand side, it shows the time remaining for this part of the test, and it shows 1 of 1, which is the first of the Summarise written text items in this test. Okay. And then they get 2 or 3 of these. Each text is up to 300 words. This one on the screen is quite a short one. The response word limit is between 5 and 75 words, and they have 10 minutes to do that. Okay. Now they have to write just 1 sentence for this item type. And they can use the words from the prompt in their summary, unlike in the IELTS test, where at least it's not counted for them. So why do they only have to use 1 sentence? It's to force a compound or complex sentence, and for candidates to show their control of cohesion. They have 10 minutes, and good test takers use it to craft a really good sentence. And they usually have more than enough time to do this. And when they're finished, they just hit next. Okay, if you just look at that text there, I'll show you a couple of summaries in a little while. And if you just think about, which keywords need to be included in your summary, and how short do you think you could make a good summary of this text? Okay, if you just think about that. Now we'll have a look at the scoring of Summarise written text. It's scored for content, formal requirements, grammar and vocabulary. Okay, there are only 3 grades for content. It either provides a good summary of the text, or a fair summary, or omits or misrepresents the main aspects. And for formal requirements, it's either one single complete sentence or it's not. If the students or the candidates get 0 for content or 0 for formal requirements, the rest of this item is not scored. So they have to do that. The reason for content is so it's not a learned answer, and the reason for formal requirements is to force them to write a compound or complex sentence. And this is really the only part in the text where they have to do that. Why is spelling not scored? People sometimes ask. It's because the candidates can use words from the text. Okay, now let's have a look at the subskills tested. Each item is designed to elicit performance of particular subskills by the test taker, and the test taker must show a degree of mastery of these subskills to do the task successfully. How well they do each individual task in Summarise written text is reflected in their score on the traits listed on the right. So the subskills tested on the left are not scored. It's what's scored is on the right. That's what's used for the scoring. The item is an integrated item type, so is scored for reading and writing communicative skills, and for 2 enabling skills. Actually 4 enabling skills: content, form, grammar and vocabulary, as we saw before. The scoring for writing tasks is the most complex in the PTEA, as most traits are scored. Just how the rating of these traits leads to the scores, as reported on the score report, will be shown later. Okay, here's a tip for your students if you're teaching PTEA. Teach your students to make sure they use one compound or preferably complex sentence to summarise the main point and briefly mention the supporting detail in the summary. Okay, this is what we said before. They must start with a capital letter. They can't write their sentence or any sentences in PTEA in capital letters. That's to force them to use capitalisation correctly. And they must have proper punctuation, including a full stop at the end. Okay, so you read the prompt a minute or so ago, and now here are 3 different summaries. So if you just read through those. The first sentence is a compound sentence and is the one suggested by Pearson as the model answer. So from that text, we got a 19-word model answer. The other 2 I did, and I'm not sure that mine are any better, but anyway, I just thought it would be interesting to see what I could do as well. Test takers should aim for approximately 30 words, somewhere in the middle of the word count or the word limit. That was a particularly short prompt. It can be up to 300 words and it can be several paragraphs. So I'm not surprised that a 19-word summary works for that short prompt. Clearly a 5-word sentence, which is the minimum word limit, would not provide a good summary, and a 75-word summary would be an unwieldy run-on sentence. And the scoring engines recognise run-on sentences and don't like them. If they don't adhere to the word limit or the response is more than 1 sentence, including a run-on sentence, the item will be automatically scored as 0, regardless of the content. So here are some ideas for teaching PTEA, Summarise written text item. Obviously, note-taking plays a big part of this because they can read their text. They have a notebook which is called an erasable noteboard booklet, which they're given when they come to the test, and they have a pen they can write on. So they can either take notes on that or they can take notes on their screen, as long as they remember to erase them before they hit next. But they must take notes, really. Okay, so we'll go on to the next one, which is write essay. Okay, so you can see again at the top right-hand side how the time's moving, and you have the instructions there and the prompt. The test takers should use their erasable noteboard booklet or the screen to plan their essay. That's really important. They get 1 or 2 of these in every test. The input text is up to 4 sentences, and this one is 4 sentences. And they have a word limit of 200 to 300 words, and as I said before, only 20 minutes to do it. They're only going to get a persuasive essay. So let's go on to have a look at this, how it's scored. So it's scored for content, formal requirements, development, structure, and coherence. It's the only PTEA item type where development, structure, and coherence is scored, and it contributes to the written discourse enabling skill. Okay, so now we'll look at the enabling skills: grammar, general linguistic range, vocabulary range, and spelling. General linguistic range is very general. The understanding of what constitutes academic writing is not as strict as in some places. First person can be used, contractions can be used, but no dot points. So how the automated scoring engine rates write essay will be discussed later. And the scoring engine is corpus-based from the academic word list. Test takers need to be very careful of spacing in their typing. Some test takers don't space after full stops and commas or other punctuation for that matter. And they must do so to get good scores for their enabling skills. So they really need to make sure that their typing is reasonable. They don't have to be good typists, they can be basic typists, but they do have to use a space bar. I know my students quite often don't. They just run it all together, and that would be a problem for the Pearson test. Okay, so let's have a look at the subskills tested. These on the left are what's tested, and on the right is what's scored. Okay, so basically the subskills that are tested are pretty much EAP skills, aren't they? Okay, so here's a tip for anybody who's teaching write essay. This is very general. Make sure that the students analyse the essay prompt so they know how to answer. It's surprising to me how many of my students write off topic because they haven't been really careful in analysing the essay prompt. So they may be asked whether they agree or disagree to a question, or argue for or against an opinion. They may be asked to describe a situation, answer a question, or discuss advantages or disadvantages. And basically that's the range of tasks. Or they may have a task that asks them to consider how different groups of people might feel about a situation or a topic as part of developing their own opinion. So it's important that they identify what task they need to do before writing anything. So here's a task. So this one is discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree. Okay, or they could be asked about how different groups of people, for example, the government, individual, wider community, like this one here at the bottom. Okay, so the students or the test takers need to note the keywords in the essay prompt so they don't write off topic. That's really important. So here I've highlighted the important keywords, and also the limiting words. In grey are the limiting words. So they should take about 5 minutes of their 20 minutes to plan their essay before they begin writing and review their essay at the end. They need to know their common errors in advance and check those before the end of their 20 minutes. And then that gives them 15 minutes to write. Okay, so students can't highlight the keywords on the prompt itself, but they should put it on their erasable notebook booklet or at the top of their screen, but they must remember to delete them later. Okay, ensure that students plan their essay. So just a basic, very basic EAP style essay. They do need to know how to write clear topic sentences and keep one idea to each body paragraph. Okay. Maybe really good students could learn to include counter-argument and rebuttal in one of their body paragraphs. Obviously, that would show a higher level of writing. Okay, here are some ideas. Okay, so now let's go on to look at reading and writing fill in the blanks. Okay, so you can see the text is with blanks and each one is a drop-down menu. It's an integrated skill scored on reading and writing subskills. They've got 5 or 6 of these, so when they finish one, they hit next at the bottom right-hand corner. They go to the next one and keep going until they're finished and they go on to the next item type. So the texts can be quite long, up to 300 words. This is, again, quite a short one. There are up to 6 gaps. Because this one's so short, it's only got 3 gaps. And each drop-down menu has 4 options. So this is an integrated skill scored on reading and writing. Okay, 11 out of the 20 item types in the PTEA are integrated skills. We saw Summarise written text earlier, and that's another integrated skills task. Okay, so why would this be reading and writing, some people ask? It's because the test takers need to get into the mind of the writer to choose the correct word. That's what we do when we're writing. We're constantly choosing between the best word for our context from the vocabulary in our heads. So we're thinking, oh, which is, am I going to do this? No. So this is the same. And these are often quite tricky, as sometimes they have confused words as the drop down or very close words. They can be word families or it could be tense. And sometimes it's register and style. Here we've got observations, examinations, consultations or considerations, which actually are fairly close. If you're not a high-level student, it might be a bit difficult with that. Okay. So this item type is partially credit scored. The test takers receive 1 score point for every correct blank filled. So there's no negative scoring for this item type, so points are not lost for incorrect words, whereas they are on some. Obviously, if test takers don't identify any of the correct words, they'll score 0. Okay, so now we can see the reading subskills tested and the writing subskills. And on the right-hand side, you can see that reading and writing are both scored. So each item is designed to elicit performance on particular subskills by the test taker, and the test taker must show some degree of mastery of these subskills to do the task successfully. How well they do each individual task in reading and writing fill in the blanks is reflected in their score on the traits listed on the right. And this item contributes to the test taker's score in reading and writing communicative skills. Okay, so now let's have a look at one. So they need to really know the context first, otherwise they have difficulty choosing the correct word. As I said before, sometimes the words are very close, and also for tense. And they really do need to read again to make sure that the flow of the item works. So access, recess and egress, they're also very similar and sound very similar. Okay, so here are some tips. And this is another one of the item types where they need to hit next to go to the next question and the next item type. Okay, so now we've got Summarise spoken text. And here you can see in the middle there's a little box which tells the candidate when the recording is going to start. So this one's going to start in 12 seconds, and it also adjusts the volume. This is the volume in the headset, not the volume in their microphone. The volume of the microphone is automatically adjusted, and some test takers have said after they've had their test that it was quite noisy in the test room, and some students feel that they have to shout into the microphone, which is unfortunate because they don't have to do that at all. So if you've got students going to do the test, tell them just to speak normally. If they speak very quietly, the microphone will automatically amplify their voice, and if they speak very loudly, not only will they annoy everybody, but the microphone will lower their volume for them. So they need to just be a little bit aware of other people around them. So there are 2 or 3 of Summarise spoken texts in each test. The recording's between 60 and 90 seconds, so fairly short, and they need to write between 50 to 70 words. This is not one sentence. They can write more than one sentence. Generally about 4 sentences, I think, is what's required. They only hear the text once, and that's for real-time language processing. The item can be, or the recording can be an interview or a monologue, and they're always authentic. Test takers can take notes on their erasable noteboard booklet or on their screen. And they have 10 minutes to complete this. So normally that's quite a lot of time. Actually, they finish well before time, and once they're finished, they just hit next. Like Summarise written text that we saw before, test takers can use the words they hear. They don't have to find their own synonyms. The texts are understandable to a lay audience. Pop science. There was an interview with Noam Chomsky on one of the scored practice tests. So they're taken from a variety of recordings. And this is an integrated skill item, testing their listening and their writing skills. So this is the scoring for Summarise spoken text. If you look at the formal requirements and spelling, let's look at the formal requirements first. It's very prescriptive in the number of words which are accepted for a 2 or a 1 or a 0. That's very precise, and humans couldn't really do that. I mean, it would be very difficult for an assessor to sit there counting words like that. And I'm sure some of you know that counting words is just, A, it's a pain, and B, we're not terribly good at it. We don't always agree. So now we'll look at how one's done, and actually we won't, because we took that out. We don't have the ability to play you a recording. But anyway, let's have a look at a tip. You should train your students to check their grammar, punctuation, and spelling. And these are the issues that my students are mainly Chinese, and they have big problems with subject-verb agreement, tenses, articles, prepositions, word order, word form, and plurals. So if the students actually know their common errors, they can just go and check for those. And I think that's really the best we can expect when they're doing their editing. So I think it's really important that everybody knows what errors they regularly make, and we can help them with that. So have a look at this one and the errors that are made in this test taker's response. And you can see there are also typos in here, so they really need to check for typos as well. So it's very important that they check. Some of these are very simple mistakes that could easily be picked up if they edited their work. So you can help your students these ways. Okay, now let's go on to have a look at scoring. I have a more detailed look. We've had a look at some of the scoring. Okay, so let's have a look at write essay. We have an essay prompt there. And you'll see towards the bottom, you've got cut, copy, and paste. The keyboard shortcuts are disabled while the test is happening. So they need to use these buttons to cut, copy, and paste. And they can also see their word count as they go down at the bottom on the left-hand side. So let's have a look at the subskills for write essay. So the test taker must show some degree of mastery of these subskills to do the task successfully. A full list of these academic language subskills for each item type is given in the official guide to PT Academic. Okay, the subskills are not directly mapped to the item type. Instead, they give an indication of how to succeed in this skill area and this item type. In other words, if the test takers master the relevant subskills underpinning an item type, they have a better chance of scoring well in that item type. So here are the writing skills for PT Academic. And you see just below the middle, using correct mechanics. That's punctuation, including capitalization. And correct form is word count. So these are basically what we teach in every AP course in Australia, I think. Okay, so for you and the candidates to know how these items are scored, how all the items are scored, there's a downloadable score guide. This score guide is 72 pages long. It's free from the PTEA website, and you can see the URL on the screen. It gives some worked examples, so it's really quite helpful for teachers to read this, and it shows, we can see a little bit of a score report there, and it shows a score report, and it goes into some detail of explanation on how a score report works, and I'll show you that in a minute or two. So it's highly detailed. Okay, so let's have a look how Write Essay is scored. This one shows how Write Essay, a non-integrated item, is scored. How scores for enabling skills, grammar, written discourse, vocabulary and spelling contribute to the total item score, and how the total item score contributes to the overall score as well as to the communicative skills score for writing. So the items first scored on content. If no response or an irrelevant response is given, the content is scored as 0. So that would be a learned response or a response in another language. If an acceptable response is provided, the item is then scored on form. If the form is inaccurate, this is scored as 0 and no more scoring happens, just goes to 0 for the whole item. So if an acceptable response on form is provided, the item is then scored on further traits: vocabulary, spelling, grammar, development, structure and coherence, and general linguistic range. The enabling skills scores, in addition to the content scores, add up to the total item score. Each enabling skills score contributes to the enabling skills scores reported for performance on the entire test. The total item score contributes to the communicative skills score for writing, as well as the overall score reported on the performance. I've just said that. Whoops. Now, let's look in more detail at these enabling skills and what they're looking for. Okay, so grammar, spelling, vocabulary, and written discourse. Spelling is quite interesting. All national variations in spelling are considered correct, so that's UK, USA, Australian, but only one spelling convention is used in each response. So if a candidate starts writing an essay and uses Z's for I's, and then starts writing program, MME, program will be scored as a spelling mistake because they've got to stick to the same spelling convention in a single response, within that response. Okay, so written discourse is pretty standard for EAP. Okay, so now let's have a look at scoring and results. So this test is totally scored by machines. There's no human scoring unless there's a reason that the machine, the scoring engine, sends it out, and I'll explain that in a minute. So on the right, you can see the score report that the test takers and accepting institutions see, and you can see that it's been calculated in quite a complex manner. They don't get a paper score report. They can print it if they like, but that's really only for their own good, because accepting institutions don't accept a paper score report. They'll only accept the score report which has come directly from Pearson, and the test taker identifies which institutions they want their score report to go to. So you can see the detail of the skills at the bottom of the score report. The top listening, reading, speaking and writing is really what the institution's interested in. But the students and their teachers are interested in the enabling skills as well, because they can see, okay, what is this candidate good at, and what do they really have to work on? And clearly this candidate's got a problem with grammar. The benefits of automated scoring is that test takers have their results in a maximum of 5 days, and often faster than that. It takes 5 days if the responses need to go out to human raters, because the scoring engine has identified a low confidence rating. So the scoring engine thinks this is a bit of an odd essay, and it gets sent out to human raters. Okay, so this is what a test centre testing room looks like. There are up to 15 candidates in a room, and they're in there for 3 hours. They can take up to 10 minutes break before their reading part if they like, but if they come back late from their 10 minutes, they lose time on their final listening part of the test. So here is some fascinating facts about scoring engines. Okay, sometimes examiners are distracted by relevant factors, poor handwriting, messy papers, etc. Okay, they can score much more different types of features than we can as humans independently. And of course, these scoring engines have been trained by thousands of different scripts. Okay, the next slide, there's quite a bit of writing, but I think that it's important for you to understand. This is how the scoring engine, which is called the Intelligent Essay Assessor, is trained. So the IEA is continually being improved as all essays are fed in. So the database of examples is always growing. Every test taker's essay is fed in. There's also the confidence value is allocated by the scoring engine. If it's too low, the response goes out to 2 or 3 human raters, as I said before. And then these essays are fed back into the scoring engine. So the scoring engine widens its ability to improve its confidence level. It's currently running at about 3%. So 3% of responses are going to human raters. And actually, test takers are not really worried about having their test marked by a machine. It's the teachers who tend to worry about this. The test takers self-select, and if they're worried about this, they do another test. So I think this sentence really sums it up. If you're interested in automated scoring, go to the PTEA website for links to the white paper on automated scoring. There are frequently asked questions and other research papers there too. And you can also go to the Pearson YouTube channel if you search for Pearson PTE on YouTube. And there are lots of talks by the people who work with these scoring engines, and they're really informative. So let's just quickly have a look at the score alignment with the IELTS test, because we're all, very clued into the IELTS test. And the PTE academic goes from 10 till 90. So you can see here the area that's kind of interest to us. Okay, this is the book, the official guide, which is really the Bible for PTEA. And I think if anybody really wants to understand it in some depth, this is the easiest way of doing it. There's lots of resources on the website, but I think the official guide really has all the answers. and there are some scored test taker responses for Write Essay in the score guide, which are really helpful. And the official guide has CD-ROMs and 3 tests, so you can use the 3 practice tests which cover all the 4 skills. And it can be used by self-study test takers, but also it has teachers' notes which are free online as PDF for class preparation. Okay, well there you are. I don't know how much time we've got. Okay, so Sophie's going to introduce the question time now.
Okay, thanks, Louise. That was fantastic. So if anyone has any questions now, feel free to type them in, and the questions can only be seen by us as the moderators. You can't see each other's questions, so Louise will answer them once you've typed them in. People often ask at this stage if we're going to share the PowerPoint slide and the recording from today's session, and the answer to that is yes. I'll be uploading it onto the English Australia website tomorrow. All right, I'll pass back to Louise now.
Okay, so we've got some questions here. Okay, so okay, we've got a question in Summarise written text. That's where you have one sentence. Should we teach our students to connect sentences through semicolons? Yes, that's okay. Everything but no full stop. The thing with semicolons, I think you just have to be really careful that it doesn't become a run-on sentence. If it really does need a full stop, the scoring engine understands that and will knock it out. So I don't sail too close to the wind on that one. Yes, there are answers to the tests on the CD-ROM, yes. And also some scored answers which shows you how a response would be scored. So a good one, a medium one, and one that needs a lot of work. Okay. Summarise written text. Oh, okay. Among the 4 writing questions, what are the questions that will have negative scoring? Okay, of the writing questions, there's no negative scoring, but there are on other items. So with these ones, there aren't. List. Okay. So couldn't find the answers on the CD-ROM. Oh, look, I don't have it with me, so I can't. I'm sorry, but have a look in the. I'm not sure what you're talking about exactly, but the CD-ROM of the book. Okay, the official guide. Have a look in the official guide itself. There certainly are answers there. I know that. Okay, in the listening section, is the timer counting down as the recorders? Yes. So the recording's played and then the timer starts. So they have time after the recording. It's not included. Okay, in terms of spacing, is there anything to know besides 1 space after a comma and 1 space after a full stop? Yeah, look, normal spacing for punctuation. After punctuation, we put in a space. If they put 2 spaces after a full stop, you know, in some countries they do that, and I think that's accepted. I'd just teach them 1 space. And between each word, they really have to check that they're spacing their words, because if they don't space their words, it will be thrown out as a spelling mistake and gobbledygook, basically. Are we finding that some people do better or worse on the PTE rather than the IELTS, and why would that be? It's a very different test. So yes, some people do better and others don't. It depends. It's tested in a very different way. As you saw with these, and there are 16 other items, they're picking up score points from all over the place. So it's not as so it's a bit hard to explain, but with the PTEA, they're getting advantages from small things that they don't get with other tests. So they can, if they've got, correct spelling, they'll get 2 points. If they write the right length of sentence with a full stop and a capital letter, they get some points. So they're just picking up points everywhere. So yes, I wouldn't say it's an easier test or a more difficult test, but it does suit some people better. It seems to be, yes. Okay. In speaking, is it compulsory to press next after finishing speaking, or is it okay? No, they must hit next with speaking. Otherwise they'll time out. It's really important. If next is at the bottom right-hand corner of their screen, as soon as they're finished and they're happy with their response, they must hit next. They can't go back. So it is important that they are happy with their response, that they can't go back and check it. With paper-based tests, they can go back and check their answers if they've got time at the end. But with the PTEA, they can't. So they do need to edit their work and check their work. In the essay, should paragraphs be separated by a blank line or just an indent? If they hit enter, that's fine. The scoring engine recognises enter as a new paragraph. So they can leave a blank line if they like, but they don't have to. It's what they're used to. Some candidates use the academic test for PR and visa purposes while not really aiming for academic study. Will there be a general training version coming soon? Now, I haven't heard of a general training version coming soon, but certainly the PTEA academic is accepted for PR and visa purposes in Australia and several other countries as well. I've just been to New Zealand and it's in the process there. So, yeah. Are the PT academic tests gradually replacing the IELTS test in Australia as the English test for entry into various institutions? Well, all tertiary institutions accept the PTEA. PTEA is growing. I don't have figures for IELTS, so I can't tell you that. But certainly PTEA is growing. Now, I don't know if the whole test-taking cohort is growing, and so I don't know. But certainly it's growing very fast in Australia. I think partially because the younger people are used to interfacing with technology. They're happy to talk to a computer, more happy perhaps than people were 10 years ago. They Skype, they FaceTime, they do all this all the time. It doesn't faze them at all to speak to a computer. And some people feel kind of less inhibited speaking to a computer than they do speaking to a person who's judging them. And also some test takers find typing much easier. I know a lot of my students would prefer to be able to type their essays for us. We make them write by hand. But I know some institutions let them type and they're quite used to doing that. So, test takers self-select and the ones who feel quite comfortable with technology, I think, are choosing PTEA. Does the timer keep ticking down when listening to the recording, or is it only ticking when recording is stopped and the students are responding? It's when the students are responding that the timer works. Yeah. Okay, we've got another one. The great stress for many of my students has been the threat of the test moving along after a 3-second pause, and that this may be inauthentic. Is this something Pearson has concerns about? All my students do. Okay. These are for speaking questions, and 3 seconds, believe it or not, is quite long. The reason that this has been put into the test is for real-time language processing. They want the students to actually think and respond like native speakers do. Somebody asks us a question, we don't sit there and formulate our response. We answer. So if you think 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, is actually quite long enough. If you know the answer and you can formulate an answer, it's quite long enough to get it out. So Pearson's quite happy with this, actually. I think students need to be reassured that 3 seconds to get an answer out, is reasonable. I think if students are quite low and maybe too low to be taking the test, then yes, it's going to be a problem for them. But if they're at the right level, they should be able to get an answer out. Will repeated words in essay answers affect the score of the test negatively? Well, it depends how often those words are repeated and which words are repeated. Clearly, if they use synonyms, they'll score for range, vocabulary range, much better than if they just keep repeating. And I think students who repeat their vocabulary a lot in a given text really are quite low level. So I think we need to get our students to broaden their vocabularies and use more words, but they don't, if they use the same word twice, that won't, knock them out. So it's not a big problem. But anyway, I think we should try and get them to use synonyms and broaden their range and also show their range. It is an exam, it's a test. They should show off in the test and show what they can do, and that's how they score high. Okay, well, look, we've come to 4:30. That's the end of the webinar. So thank you very much. There will be more chances to learn about the PTEA, and I hope to see you at different venues where I talk. I'm at the NIAS conference next week. I'll be doing a different session, so you could learn something different. Okay, thanks very much, and thanks very much, Sophia, for hosting it.
Great. So, English Australia would just like to thank Louise again, and also Pearson for presenting this session. And I think we all agree that it was fantastic to have someone who could give us some answers to those really specific questions that we as teachers and our students need to know. So thank you again, Louise. And thank you to all our attendees today. We're finishing now.